And so Brenda, the first case is going to be Brenda Shelton.
The first matter before the hearing panel today is regarding license number R649295. Is a restoration. Shelton, you are represented by counsel. Please state your name.
Brent Ryan.
Thank you, sir. And for the state, we have.
Kim Turner, Assistant Attorney General, representing the board today.
All right, thank you very much. We'll just lay a little groundwork for how we'll proceed today. We will start with opening statements. Have hear from both sides, of course, since this is a restoration. We'll begin with the licensee. We will then hear from the state. Any questions that may come before you will come from members of this board panel or myself. The board will make findings of fact and conclusions of law and will render its decision in this matter, a copy of which will be forwarded to the applicant, usually within 30 to 45 days. At this time, I'll ask that all witnesses be sworn in. Do you have anyone besides your client, Mr.?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we have Dr. Patrick Chapman, in addition to Brenda Shelton and Ms. Tracy Hickman. Both of them are joining us virtually.
I need each witness to please raise your right hand. Can we get Ms. Hickman on?
Hickman, will you?
Raise your right hand, Ms. Hickman. Each of you solemnly swear that the testimony you're going to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
I do.
Thank you.
For the record, I'd like to announce that there is a quorum present. The majority of the board shall constitute a quorum. These hearings are open to the public. Board may deliberate and make its decision in executive session. Do we have any preliminary matters other than preliminary matters? Are there exhibits that need to be entered?
Mr. Chairman, the restoration packet is on file with the board. Is that something that we need to bring into evidence as well, or is that something that's considered already in evidence?
I think this might help. The board will introduce, the state will introduce exhibits B2 through B9, which will include the restoration packet. So I've already spoken to counsel opposite, which he stated there was no objection to the introduction of B2 through B9.
Okay, hearing no objection, they will be admitted. Anything further preliminary? If not, we will begin with opening statements. Mr. Ryan, may I proceed?
Mr. Chairman, members of the panel, my name is Brent Ryan with Gilchrist Donnell Law Firm. I'm here today representing Brenda Shelton in the restoration of her RN and APRN licenses. The order which suspended Ms. Shelton's licenses was back in June of 2017. Ms. Shelton has spent the last 5 years reflecting on how her mistakes caused the actions and the situation that she finds herself in. Ms. Shelton is remorseful of her actions, as she will tell this panel. She misses treating her patients. She misses serving the community. She misses being a nurse practitioner. Ms. Shelton has had a long career treating patients. She wants to use her 30+ years of experience to help others again. She lives in Ripley, Mississippi, which is a small rural area about 32 miles southwest of Corinth. Ms. Shelton is an asset to her community. She has served them as a nurse practitioner, as a Sunday school teacher, and as a small business owner. Ms. Shelton's community needs her as well. Between COVID, the nursing shortage in the state, and the rural nature of her community, the need for Ms. Shelton's services is very real. You'll hear testimony about how difficult it is to attract primary care physicians to this area and how facilities must rely on nurse practitioners to fill these gaps. You'll also hear how much her patients love her. She's been a staple in the community's healthcare provider network for decades. At the end of this proceeding, it is our hope that you will determine that her accountability for her errors and the value to her community as a nurse practitioner outweigh the mistakes she has made. I have nothing further.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Counsel.
Thank you. As I stated, my name is Kim Turner. I'm representing the board here today and the panel specifically. This is not the first time that Ms. Shelton has been before this board, having twice appeared before the board in 2014 and in 2017. In 2014, Ms. Shelton did voluntarily surrender her privileges, including her controlled and non-controlled prescriptive authority, after having admitted to altering approximately 62 patient records. Her privilege to practice and her non-controlled prescriptive authority was later restored in 2016, subject to some restrictions. However, her controlled substance prescriptive authority was not restored at that time. However, beginning in November 2015, Ms. Shelton admitted again to the board in 2017 to having prescribed an estimated 59 controlled substances while employed at North Mississippi Healthcare. Thus, by a second agreed order, Ms. Shelton again voluntarily surrendered her privilege to practice nursing in the state for a minimum of 1 year. As I understand from counsel opposite's opening statement, she is remorseful, and there are several factors for this board to consider when determining whether or not to restore the privileges of Ms. Shelton to practice nursing again. The severity of her acts, the conduct of her subsequent to her surrender of her licenses, compliance with any restoration requirements, whether she has violated any applicable law, statute, or rule regulation, evidence of her rehabilitation efforts, her competency, as counsel opposite stated, it's been 5 years since she surrendered her license, and though she may have maintained and taken continuing education, is she still competent and capable of fulfilling the duties of her job? And then lastly, evidence of the applicant's ability to safely practice nursing. As I stated, the board has seen Ms. Shelton twice before. So these are the factors for the board, for this panel to consider as the evidence presented to you here today. Ms. Shelton, as the applicant, bears the burden of proving to this board that she has satisfied these factors, that she is remorseful, and she has rehabilitated herself to the point that the panel feels comfortable in restoring her license. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Ryan, you may call your first witness.
Mr. Chairman, we call Brenda Shelton. Ms. Shelton, can you state your name, please, for the record?
Brenda Shelton,
And why are we here today, Ms. Shelton?
to ask the board to reinstate my license, RN and APRN.
Before your voluntary surrender of your licenses, how long were you a practicing nurse practitioner?
I practiced as a nurse practitioner for 19 years, and I practiced as just an RN for 14 years.
And what area of nursing did you practice in?
I was a certified family nurse practitioner, so I work in primary care.
And could you summarize for the panel your work history?
In 1981, I started working at Tippah County Hospital as a CNA and also a board secretary. I began working as an RN in 1984 at the Tippah County Hospital, and I did that for up until 1997. In 1997, I went to Healthcare Associates working as an RN, and I graduated in 1998 as a nurse practitioner. I continued working at Healthcare Associates as a nurse practitioner for the next 5 years. Then I went to Family Nurse Clinic and worked there almost 10 years. At that time, I went to Ageless Men's Health, and I worked there until March of 2014. At that time, I started working part-time at Family Care Clinic of New Albany. And then I went on in May of that same year to work for North Mississippi Primary Health Care. I did that until, let's see, it was July of 14 when I surrendered my license. I came back before the board and started back working at North Mississippi Primary Health Clinic in November of 15. And I did that until June of 17 when I surrendered again. And then after that, June of 17, I decided to open a small business. I opened up a daylight donut shop, and I have been doing that ever since.
What do you enjoy about treating patients?
I enjoy trying to help the patients. I enjoy primary care, hands-on care. I want to be of service to my community and to the patients.
Where would you like to practice should your APRN license be reinstated?
Tippah County Hospital has a rural health care clinic that they have asked, would I work there if my license are restored, and it's a clinic inside the hospital.
And who has asked you to do that?
Dr. Patrick Chapman.
Have you worked for him before?
Yes, sir, I have.
Where was that?
At North Mississippi Primary Health Clinic both times. I was a practitioner working in primary care.
Okay. In July of 2014, the board suspended your APRN because you committed violations of the nursing practice law. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
What were the violations identified by the board?
The violations were altered medical records and giving testosterone outside of the clinic.
What were the circumstances surrounding your practice at Ageless Men's Clinic?
There was great pressure to increase your numbers. They would have weekly conference meetings to where all the clinics were on there. And it's something I regret. I wish I could take back. I regret it to this day. But the pressure was so high, they would embarrass you. They would call you out if your numbers weren't high enough. So I regrettably altered records to increase the numbers for them. And I shouldn't have.
Ultimately, whose responsibility was it?
That was my responsibility, and I should have said no.
And because of those violations, you entered into an agreed order with the board in 2014. Is that true?
Yes, sir.
And in that order, you agreed to voluntarily surrender your APRN privilege to practice for 1 year. Is that
Yes,
correct?
yes, sir.
And you agreed to surrender your prescriptive authority for controlled substances to the board, correct?
Yes, sir.
Did you abide by the terms of that order?
Yes, sir.
A little over 1 year later, around September 1st of 2015, you submitted an application to restore your nursing license. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And there was a restoration hearing around October 14th of 2015. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
At the conclusion of that hearing, did the board find that you had met all conditions of the previous order from 2014?
Yes, sir.
Did the board restore your license?
Yes, with some conditions, with a number of conditions.
Dr. Chapman, the CEO of Tippah County Hospital, and who was the administrator at North Mississippi Primary Care, he wanted to hire you back after your disciplinary proceedings. Is that true?
Yes, sir.
Did either of you communicate with the board following your hearing in October?
Yes, sir. We both did.
And who did you speak with?
We spoke with Jeffrey Lewis out of the legal department.
And when did those conversations take place?
They took place, I think, around the end of October of 15.
Okay. Do you know why Dr. Chapman spoke to Mr. Lewis?
Yes, he called him to make sure it was okay to hire me and was told that I was fully instated.
Okay. And why did you talk to Mr. Lewis?
Dr. Chapman wanted to hire me back at North Mississippi Primary Care Clinic. And so I wanted to call Mr. Lewis to make sure that it was okay that I returned to work. He told me that they were behind on the paperwork more so than usual. And I specifically, he said I could go ahead and go back to work without the order. And I specifically asked him to make sure that the prescriptions for controlled substances was included. And he said, yes, they were. I was fully reinstated.
And what happened next?
Next, I went back to work, and then I received the order toward the end of January of 16.
Okay. Did you realize anything at that point?
And when I received the order, I realized it did not include the controlled substances.
Okay. Between the time that Mr. Lewis told you that it was okay to go back to work and before you received the order in late January, had you written prescriptions for controlled substances?
Yes, sir.
Did you write any controlled substances after receiving the order in late January?
No, sir.
Who did you talk to after you received the order?
I called my lawyer.
And what was that conversation?
He advised me not to write any more controlled substances, but just not to say anything.
And is that what you did?
That's exactly what I did.
In retrospect, would you follow that advice again?
No, sir, I would not.
What would you have done?
I would have called Mr. Lewis back and asked him to explain to him what happened and try to work it out.
What happened next?
At the end of the probationary period, the Board of Nursing ran the PMP and saw that I had written substances from the end of 15 to the first part of January of 16. And so the board investigated, and then I explained the situation, and then I voluntarily surrendered my license in June of 17.
You mentioned this before, but after you surrendered your licenses in June of 17, what did you do?
I opened up a daylight donut shop. I had a cousin that had one, and I decided I needed something to do. So I opened up that small business.
Over the course of time, you've been active in your community and in your church. Can you tell the panel a little bit about that?
Yes, I've been a Sunday school teacher for 20 years. I've participated in helping with Vacation Bible School. At the donut shop, we made fresh donuts every day. So I tried to give back to the community by, at the end of the day, I would give away what donuts we had left. For instance, there's a Living Free Ministry in Corinth that's an addiction recovery program. I would give donuts to them. Also, Northeast Mississippi Community College had an after-school program for children. I would give donuts to them. The nursing homes there, Mississippi Care, and also Cornerstone, I would carry the leftover donuts to the residents where they could enjoy them. There was a lady in Kossuth that had latchkey kids. I would give donuts to her also in the afternoons.
Since your last order that was entered in 2017, what have you done to stay active and knowledgeable about practice of nursing?
I have over 190 CEUs. I tried to concentrate on ethics and pharmacology. I also took Edge Review online. I also took it was a family nurse practitioner intensive review. I took that online. And then also I studied for and passed recertification for a family nurse practitioner through the ANCC board.
Ms. Shelton, most importantly, why do you want your licenses back?
I would like my license back because I learned from my mistakes, and I'm going to be more responsible for my actions. I'm going to make sure I know what the rules are, and I'm going to follow them. I have been a nurse in nursing for 33 years, and that's really all I know that I love to do. That's my thing. I think I can help patients. I think I can help the community. My community does not have very many providers. With COVID and with the shortage of healthcare providers and nurses, I think I can be an asset.
We have no more questions for Ms. Shelton.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm going to hand this to your lawyer. This is what we purport to be a copy of your application for restoration. It's going to be marked as Exhibit B9 and introduced into evidence. If I could just have you flip through it and let me know if that is indeed the application restoration that you submitted to the board.
Yes, it is.
Okay, and on the last, not the very last page, because you have your education at the back, but could you just verify, is that your signature on that application?
Yes.
Okay. So that's a true and complete copy of the application. Correct. Okay, you can hang on to it. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions about your application. If you see on, there's a section Part B of the application. starts on page 1. And there's 9 questions in part B, correct? Or actually, I
Yes.
think there's 10, I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and you answered no to all those questions, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you've never been convicted of a crime, a felony, or a misdemeanor, correct?
No, ma'am.
And you have no pending charges.
No, ma'am.
And then each time you voluntarily surrendered your license, so no authority has suspended, revoked, or restricted your license, correct?
Correct.
And then on question number 10, have you ever received counseling or treatment connected with, I know it says the revocation, surrender, suspension, denial of your license. And you check no, you've never received any type of counseling.
No, ma'am.
And by this application, you're asking the board to reinstate, from what I understand, both your licenses, correct? Yes, ma'am. But as you admitted, you've been before the board or a hearing panel of the board on 2 different occasions, in 2014 and in 2017, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And so to walk through those couple of agreed orders, and given what I read in your transcripts, your first agreement with the board was in July of 2014.
Yes, ma'am.
And you voluntarily surrendered your license and your privileges to practice together with your prescriptive authority for controlled and non-controlled substances. And that arose from, while you're working at Ageless Men's Health in Tupelo, you falsified and altered the lab records of 62 patients.
Correct.
And from what I understand, it had to do with testosterone injections, the number of testosterone injections.
Yes, ma'am.
And in that same time period, you also admitted to providing testosterone injections to individuals outside of actually the medical clinic.
They would send someone to the clinic for us to go give the testosterone shots outside the clinic.
And you testified at that time in that particular, in your agreed order, I apologize. In your agreed order, you readily admitted and took responsibility for what you had done.
Yes, ma'am.
Later, when you were seeking restoration of your license, you did testify that, again, you regretted, and if you had it to do again, you wouldn't do it.
That's correct. I've never done anything like that before, and I've not done anything like that since.
You take personal responsibility for your choices, though.
Yes, I do.
Hearing you testify even today, you said the pressure of the numbers, and you
Yes.
felt like you had to do it.
I did, but I'm the one that did it. I'm the one that's responsible.
How does the board know that if given a high pressure situation similar to that you wouldn't do it again?
I didn't do it when I went back the second after I was restored. I didn't deal with testosterone, but I did not alter any records those years that I worked after the 14th incident.
You entered into that agreed order with regard to the altering the medical records and given the testosterone injections. You successfully completed all the terms and conditions of your
Yes,
agreement?
ma'am. I completed all the terms of the agreement.
Okay. So in about September 2015, you submitted an application for restoration, correct? And like I mentioned, you admitted during that hearing, and I think you specifically said your heart had gotten the best of you. And even if you had to choose between a job and your license, you would never do anything like that
I would
again.
never do anything like that again.
But then you kind of did, isn't that correct?
Well, I think there was a miscommunication between myself and the board when I called Mr. Jeffrey Lewis.
You had a hearing when you were seeking restoration of your license following that first surrender in October of
15.
15, in October of 15. So you had a hearing, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And during that hearing, did the hearing panel tell you or announce to you what their decision was with regard to your license application?
Yes, they did. And it was my understanding that that was reinstated.
Okay. Did they not specifically talk about the restoration of your authority to prescribe controlled and non-controlled substances at that time?
If they did, I didn't understand it.
So when they did restore your license that time, it's correct that your DEA license had been surrendered and had not been reinstated.
Well, when I called and had the drugstore run it, the drugstore was told that it was good, that the expiration was February the 28th of 2018.
But when you did get the order, the final order from the board, in January, I believe by January 21st, 2016 is the date of that final order.
Yes,
Your license was reinstated, but your prescriptive authority for controlled substances was not.
that's correct.
And you had already started working at North Mississippi.
Correct.
And so according to your testimony, you had already prescribed controlled substances.
That's correct.
And you did not prescribe any further controlled substances.
not. No, ma'am.
So even though, did you realize it was wrong though, once you saw the order and knew that your prescriptive authority?
Yes, and that's why I called my lawyer.
And you regret following your lawyer's
I
advice?
regret following my lawyer's advice.
And if you had that to do differently, you would not do the same.
I would
as you
not
did.
follow my lawyer's advice.
Okay. But as far as making sure you understand what you can and can't do, should this panel reinstate
Yes.
your license?
I would make sure myself, I would not depend on somebody else. I would make sure myself 100% that I could do what I was needing to do.
Excuse me, just for the benefit of the court reporter, let her finish her question before you respond.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Arising from your prescribing of controlled substances, you again agreed to surrender your license, correct?
Yes,
That was in June of 2017.
yes,
And from what I understand from that agreed order, there are no conditions that were imposed upon you.
correct.
In your application, you've submitted several recommendations, correct?
Yes,
And those recommendations are from friends, family, colleagues, is that correct?
yes, sir. That's correct.
And you've already testified, so I won't belabor the point. It does seem as though you have maintained continuing education, sought recertification. Am I correct?
Yes,
Do you feel that if you were given the opportunity that you are capable of fulfilling the duties of what would be required of you as a practical nurse?
yes, I do.
Since you surrendered your license, have you worked at all as a nurse?
No,
Have you written any prescriptions since you had surrendered your license in
No.
2017?
no, ma'am.
I think you've answered these questions. You have a plan, obviously, to work at Tippah County Hospital, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
I think those are all the questions I have. I'll tender the witness.
Can you read the rest? Next witness.
Dr. Patrick Chapman. May I begin? Dr. Chapman, can you state your name for the panel, please?
Patrick Chapman.
And Dr. Chapman, where do you work?
I work at Tippah County Hospital. I'm the administrator.
And what do you do as part of those duties?
Well, I oversee the hospital, the rural health clinic, and the nursing home that's connected to this campus. I am not a medical doctor. My doctorate is in counseling psychology, but I have an advanced degree in healthcare administration, and I'm the CEO of the hospital.
How do you know Ms. Shelton?
Well, we've lived in the same community all of our lives. We both grew up in Ripley. She had a private clinic in Ripley, as she stated earlier. And then we worked together at North Mississippi Primary Health Care, where I worked before I became administrator of the hospital.
And what is North Mississippi Primary Health Care?
It's a federal qualified health center, FQHC. They see patients based on their ability to pay, and a safety net provider for the community to see patients who are primarily uninsured in poor communities and that kind of thing.
What was your role at North Mississippi Primary Health Care?
My title was program administrator. Some organizations call that the chief operating officer. It's equivalent. That's where I oversaw the credentialing and privileging and administered the programs of the Qualified Health Center.
Were you also involved in hiring?
Yes, I was involved in the hiring.
Why did North Mississippi Primary Healthcare hire Ms. Shelton?
Well, she was a good candidate. We needed her. She was well known in the community. She had a good reputation as a nurse practitioner. Patients love her. We really needed a provider for our clinic. It's difficult to attract providers in extreme Northeast Mississippi, and she was a really good fit.
What did Ms. Shelton do at the Federally Qualified Health Center?
She saw primary care patients. She worked alongside Dr. DeWayla South, who was her preceptor. She saw acutes and chronic patients, walk-ins, and established appointments.
How would you describe Ms. Shelton's job performance?
She has the best work ethic. She has the best attitude. She's willing to get the job done. She'll stay late. She'll see the patients. She doesn't turn people away. She's just, she's a rare jewel.
What did patients think of the care that they received from Ms. Shelton?
Community loves Ms. Shelton. She's courteous, caring. Our patients really respect her and care for her.
My understanding is that Ms. Shelton began to work for North Mississippi Primary Healthcare in May of 2014, but that ended upon her entering this agreed order with the Board of Nursing in 2014, which suspended her APRN license. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And you were working at North Mississippi Primary Healthcare at that time?
Yes, I was the program administrator.
You were aware that in October of 2015, she petitioned the board to restore her license.
Yes.
Did you have any conversations with anyone at the Board of Nursing after that hearing?
Yes, I called Mr. Jeffrey Lewis myself.
And what did you speak about?
I asked him if it was acceptable for Miss Shelton to return to work.
And what did he say?
He told me that yes, that her license had been restored.
Did you talk about her prescriptive authority?
We did not discuss her prescriptive authority, but I did query the DEA myself, and it showed active. There was no alerts or anything on her DEA. I know that Ripley Drug Store did the very same thing. They called the DEA and it was active.
And you wanted to hire her back at that point?
I did.
Why is that?
We needed her. We had a provider out on maternity leave. We had others out sick. We were closing clinics because we didn't have providers to care for our patients. And I desperately needed her to return to work. And she had been approved to return to work, or at least I was under the understanding. And so we had her complete credentialing file. She had already worked for us successfully. And so we allowed her to return to work.
As part of your current duties, you oversee a medical clinic within Tippah County Hospital. Is that correct?
That's correct.
What type of clinic is that?
It's a rural health clinic within our hospital.
What types of services does it provide?
Well, very similar to the FQHC. It's a primary care. It's a convenient for the community. Patients who present to the ER can be medically screened out. And if they're not true emergencies, they have the option of the rural health clinic. And it also is just a safety net provider for the community.
And you've had discussions with Ms. Shelton about working with you again as a nurse practitioner. Is that correct?
That is correct.
You're knowledgeable about the two disciplinary matters that we're here today discussing. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So based on that information, why are you interested in hiring Ms. Shelton back?
Well, we need her. COVID has presented unique problems to us. Our patients need her. We believe that she's a positive asset. We believe that she would attract patients. We really need her to see primary care patients. There are times where we struggle to get all these shifts filled in our rural health clinic. And there have been a couple times we've had to close the clinic.
Can you describe the community need a little bit further?
Well, We have 3 primary care physicians practicing in this entire county, and all 3 of them are above the age of 65. We're hurting for primary care in Tippah County. Ms. Shelton has a proven track record. She's highly qualified. I know her work ethic, and I've seen her abilities firsthand. And so I think that she's needed. We have an excellent medical staff team. We have excellent supervision. We're willing to watch every I and cross every T. We need her for primary care. This is not a situation where we need her to see testosterone patients or anything of the like.
We know that as a CEO of a hospital, you're very busy. Why did you take the time today to testify on behalf of Ms. Shelton?
I believe in her as a person. I believe she deserves a second chance. I know about the first situation. The second situation, I truly believe, was a communication problem and a misunderstanding. Again, we take ownership and responsibility of that situation. But I think she deserves an opportunity to serve her community again, and I believe in her, and that's why I'm testifying today.
Do you believe the board should restore Ms. Shelton's licenses to practice nursing?
Yes, I do.
Send it to her.
Thank you. Dr. Chapman, my name is Kim Turner, and I just have a few questions for you today.
Okay.
Well, if Ms. Shelton does have her privileges restored and she comes to work at Tippah County Hospital, what type of supervision will there be for her?
Well, she'll be directly supervised by our clinical director in the Rural Health Clinic. She will be required to come to quality. She'll be required to come to medical staff meeting, and all of her charts will be reviewed.
And you do understand the previous proceedings that were brought against Ms. Shelton,
Yes.
and neither give you any pause or cause for concern sitting here today.
I was aware of the first situation. Again, when we hired her at the North Mississippi Primary Health Care, we weren't interested in testosterone or controlled substances in that regard. We just needed her to see primary and acute patients. And that is what we need here at the Tippah County Hospital. And we're absolutely willing to watch every moment of that.
You do understand, though, that the first charge is more than testosterone injections. It seems to, would you not agree that it could imply that if there is pressure, Ms. Shelton is prone to altering records or taking a shortcut that may not necessarily be allowed under the law?
Yes, I'm aware of that, but we are very much willing to supervise every situation with Ms. Shelton and to put teeth into her contract where that does not occur.
And I've heard you and Ms. Shelton a couple of times tie the first violation of altering the medical records to just some testosterone injections. Do you believe Ms. Shelton understands the severity of her actions, which led to her initial surrender?
I do. I mean, I've met with her in my office, eyeball to eyeball. We have had these discussions. We've talked about how we can prevent this moving forward and how this should never happen again and how we're going to be transparent in every regard.
And you have faith that if Ms. Shelton were to be afforded restoration of her privileges and there were restrictions or any type of requirements, you feel confident that Ms. Shelton would be able to fulfill those requirements and you would assist her in that?
Absolutely.
And as a member of the Tippah County community or Ripley community, you have witnessed firsthand Ms. Shelton's efforts in the community, and you feel that she has shown some sufficient efforts to be warranted another opportunity to practice nursing.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you satisfied that Ms. Shelton would still have the competency to fully fulfill her duties as a nurse practitioner or even a registered nurse, given the gap between the last time she practiced and now?
I do feel good about that. With her continuing education, with her direct supervision that we will have her in the clinic with another provider, I feel like that she can return to primary care, seeing acute and chronic patients.
I have no further questions. Thank you.
Any questions for Dr. Chapman from the board panel?
So I was going over your information, Michelle.
Dr. Chapman.
I'm sorry, Dr. Chapman, I apologize. My question is this for you. Excuse me. Seeing that you are one of those facilities similar to what I work for, will Ms. Shelton only be relegated to that clinic?
Absolutely.
And just so that I can get some clarification, when the testosterone and the additional board issues that she had on the second go round were all under her tenure with you, correct?
That's correct.
That's the only question I have.
Anything further from the board panel?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Laura.
This is Laura Moore. I'm a nurse practitioner. Dr. Chapman, I was just curious, should we restore the license? Do you feel that it would hinder the practice if she had some further restrictions as far as controlled substance prescriptive authority? Do you feel that that's necessary to her practice, or would that be something that you could accommodate?
I think we can accommodate. She will be in the rural health clinic with other providers,
Okay.
MD and other nurse practitioners.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Anything further? Any redirect for Dr. Chapman?
Briefly, Dr. Chapman, if you had any concerns about hiring Ms. Shelton back, would you bring her back to your clinic?
If I had any concerns, I would not bring her back. I don't have any concerns, and that's why I'm here today.
Thanks.
All right, council, next witness.
We call Ms. Tracy Hickman.
May proceed.
Ms. Hickman, can you state your name for the panel, please?
Tracy Hickman.
Ms. Hickman, we're having trouble hearing you. Can you get a little bit closer to your mic, please?
Tracy Hickman. My computer keeps saying there's a problem. I can quickly change devices if I need to.
She said my computer issue.
Can we take a short break so she can relocate?
It's on her end, not her.
It's on her end. She's saying she's
It's on-
having issues with
yeah,
her computer.
I can change devices if I need to.
We can take a brief recess to try to let her get that resolved.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, Ms. Hickman, if you can go to a different location, that'd be great.
Yeah, I can. It'll just take just a second.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Hickman, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay, we can hear you. Thank you.
All right, much better. We
Okay.
are back on the record.
Ms.
Council.
Hickman, can you state your name, please?
Tracy Hickman.
And Ms. Hickman, you're a nurse practitioner, is that correct?
Yes, I am.
In what area of nursing do you practice?
I've been a family nurse practitioner since 1998, and I've been a psychiatric nurse practitioner since 2003.
And where do you work?
I work at Region 4 Mental Health in Corinth, Mississippi.
How do you know Ms. Shelton?
I've known Brenda for nearly 30 years. I was previously employed at Magnolia Regional Health Center, and Brenda was employed at Tippah County Hospital. And at that time, this was back in the 90s, I worked in the education department at Magnolia, and she worked at the education department at Tippah County Hospital. So we would go to regional meetings together, and we become friends. Later, we would coordinate the LPN IV therapy certification course. So we would coordinate that together, be able to certify LPNs at both of our facilities. We attended many conferences together. After that, we both showed up at the W to start our nurse practitioner school. Neither one of us knew the other one was going. We went through the nurse practitioner program there together, and then we have remained colleagues and friends since that time, and we finished at the W in 1998.
What do you think about Ms. Shelton professionally?
Professionally, she's always been someone that I have consulted with. I've always trusted her judgment. She's very knowledgeable. She stays updated. As far as professionally, I have referred several clients, many clients to her. And one of my most important people in my family, my father, I drove him to Ripley to see Brenda. I kept thinking he was falling through the cracks, and I trusted her to take care of my father, and I would trust her to take care of any of my family members. Working here at Region 4, we have clients here in our crisis center from all the counties. So I'm referring to nurse practitioners in different counties, and I've made many referrals to her because I know that she takes good care of her patients.
What do you know about Ms. Shelton's character?
She is a very honest person. She's very hardworking. She, like all the other things that stated, she has always been a church going person. She's been dedicated to our profession. She's always been a believer in, being members of our Mississippi Nurses Association. She's precepted students before. She's always been very dedicated to our profession.
What do you know about what Ms. Shelton has done since 2017 in terms of staying current with nursing education and the practice of nursing?
Like she stated earlier, I was aware that she has been updating her CEUs. She's been networking with colleagues. Of course, I've been in touch with Brenda through all of these years. But when she talked about getting her license restored, she talked to me about it and got some advice about what I thought she should do. And the number one thing was update yourself on medicines, because there's so many new medicines. And I think she's put forth a lot of effort to, network with her colleagues and try to update and educate herself on the latest medicines and procedures.
You believe the board should reinstate Ms. Shelton's licenses?
Yes, I do.
Why is that?
Ms. Shelton has a lot of experience. She's very knowledgeable. She, like Dr. Chapman said, she is well thought of in the community. She had a huge patient following, and there's a shortage of nurses. There's a shortage of staff. I'm here in Corinth, and every clinic is booked. I have my own patients that I'm having to get COVID tested, and it is a real challenge trying to get appointments, and there's a real need for healthcare providers in our area. I took my mother to the North Mississippi clinic that's the same as what they were talking about the other day. They had a nurse practitioner that had transferred somewhere else. They were short-staffed. It's just rampant.
No further questions.
Thank you. Morning, Ms. Hickman.
Hello?
Yes, you drafted a reference for Ms. Shelton's restoration application. Is that
Yes,
correct?
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you made reference to she had voluntarily surrendered her license with regard to writing prescriptions, correct?
Yes.
Were you aware of the previous occasion that Ms. Shelton had surrendered her license by virtue of altering medical records?
I did know that there was a problem at the men's clinic, and yes, I did know that there were some issues and that she had surrendered her license.
Okay, and you said issues. Were you aware that she had altered medical records?
Yes.
Okay. And were you aware that she was giving testosterone injections outside of the clinic?
I knew that they were pressuring her to give the testosterone. As far as outside the clinic, I was not aware of that, but I was making the assumption that, I'm going to use this as an example, like going places, giving flu shots, that different, places would want them to come and give testosterone, or I knew it was a huge, big business. As far as her doing anything wrong, giving it outside the clinic, I was not aware of that.
Given your relationship with Ms. Shelton and your experience working with her, do you believe that she has an appreciation for what she has done in the past and recognizes that her actions were severe?
Yes. I know that she's been very remorseful, and it was out of character for Brenda to have done that. And she was put under great pressure, unfortunately.
And like you and Dr. Chapman have both stated, there's a lot of pressure in the medical community right now with short staffing and COVID. Are you certain that with the pressures now with a nursing practice that she would walk the straight and narrow and again break the law?
No, I believe she will walk the straight and narrow. And it's a sad thing, unfortunately, that many of us are put under these pressures. Probably everybody's put under those pressures, but no, there's no doubt I wouldn't be here today if I didn't have confidence in her to do the right thing and to be a big value in the community in Tippah County.
And you believe she's an asset to the community, correct?
Absolutely. And I think that if her license are restored, as soon as the community knows she's back in that clinic, her patients will be right back to her. They have a lot of confidence in her. It was a huge loss. It is a huge loss not having Brenda.
You said you had sent, I believe you said your father or family members to see Ms. Shelton in the past, correct?
Yes.
Would you still refer your own family members to see her?
Absolutely. I mean, I would do that in a second because I trust her that much. And absolutely, with primary care, she, as far as consulting with her on, because I mainly do, psych. And so, she's one of these people that always stays current with our medicines and absolutely.
And you don't have any concern that she hasn't practiced in 5 years. You don't have any concerns that she'll be able to pick up and successfully fulfill her duties if her license were to be restored today.
No, I don't have any concerns about that. I told her attorney that I know Brenda well enough that I doubt she's gotten very behind anyway in these past 5 years, because that's what kind of person she is. She stays up to date, and we've had conversations, with COVID, in the past couple of years, and she's just the kind of person that stays up to date. She has her CEUs, but I doubt she's actually got that far behind.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Questions for Ms. Hickman from the panel? Redirect.
Yes.
We actually do have some questions for Ms. Shelton from the panel. So it's time.
Mr. Chairman, may the witnesses be excused.
Oh, certainly, they might.
Thank you, Dr. Chapman. Thank you, Ms. Hickman.
Okay. Ms. Shelton, I do have some questions.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to clarify what I understand of your board order. Did you understand what it meant on your initial visit in 2014 that you had to wait for the final board order to come to you before you could practice?
No, I did not understand that.
Did you make contact with the Board of Nursing to get that information?
I called Jeffrey Lewis. Yes, ma'am.
And to clarify once again, you stated that your employer and that the other person at the time that was here stated to you that you were good to go. Did you check your license?
My
Go
DEA.
online and look at
Yes,
your license.
yes, I
and
did.
See any findings?
Yes, I did. The DEA was good. It had expiration date of February the 28th of 2018.
On the day of your board hearing, when they came back out, did
Okay.
they tell you what your restrictions would be that day?
I didn't understand that I did not have prescriptive authority for controlled substances that day. I don't know if it's because I was nervous. I don't know. I didn't understand that.
When you came before the board the second time, did you wait for your board order to practice?
I did not. Because I called Jeffrey Lewis.
After your second
The
time
second,
before the,
right. The
Board of
first
Nursing.
time I didn't call. Wait a minute. I'm getting mixed up. What date are you referring to?
your 2016 appearance before us as well, because we addressed your 2014, and you came back in, what was it, 16, 17? That you had to come before the board again.
I didn't come before the board in 16 or 17. I just voluntarily,
Okay, so when you got that final,
when I got the final order in January of 16, it was mailed to me.
and did you understand it and abide by it?
Yes, ma'am, I sure did.
Okay, so the next question I have for you is this. For us, our first objective is to protect the public.
Yes.
You have not practiced in any capacity as a nurse in 5 years. I reviewed your application process, and your CEUs were done within 1.5 months before your application. Do you have any documentation that you did education over that 5-year period?
That education that I did, I started in September of 2000 and 2020 is when I started reading all those and doing those.
So just to
But not-
clarify,
Yes.
because I looked at every one of them, In the
I took
earlier
these-
shows September of 2021.
Yes,
That was 1.5 months before you applied for your application,
correct.
correct? So my question is, during the remainder of that 5 years, did you do any education?
I did keep up. I did not do CEUs, if that makes sense. I did read, I did keep up, but I did not take the CEU exams.
Do you feel confident after 5 years of not being in practice to go out there and be a provider?
Yes, ma'am, I do. I took those 2 online classes, the intensive family nurse practitioner intensive review, and I also did EDGE review. And then I took the certification, family nurse practitioner certification exam, November the 6th, and I passed it. So I do feel confident.
If the board so chooses, and I can't speak on behalf of anyone, but if the board so chooses, have you work in the role of an RN, how comfortable are you with that?
I'm comfortable with that too.
That's all my questions.
Any further questions from the panel for Shelton?
I have one. You said that you took the recertification review
Yes,
for that ANCC? Is that the one? It's not in here.
ma'am. I have it in my vehicle downstairs.
You passed that.
November the 6th, 2021, I passed.
And the EDGE review, did you take that within this time frame also?
Yes, I did.
Have you done, those are all online. Have you done any, which I know,
With COVID, no,
COVID, there's nothing much
nothing offered.
in person.
No, ma'am.
That's the only question I have.
Anything further from the board panel from Ms. Shelton? Do council, you have any additional questions for Ms. Shelton based on what's just been asked?
No, sir.
Do you, counsel?
No, sir.
At this time, I think we're ready for closing statements. Council?
I'll be brief. I think what you've heard today is telling in terms of Ms. Shelton's remorse. She recognizes the errors that she has made. She recognizes that she should have exercised better judgment. I think the people that have spoken on her behalf, Dr. Chapman and Ms. Hickman, can represent and vouch for her ability, not only her knowledge to practice nursing, but also her experience and her character. That these activities that have taken place are outside of her character. And she desperately wants another chance to serve her community. We hope that you grant her that opportunity.
Thank you, counsel. Ms. Turner?
Yes. Ms. Shelton did complete her application for restoration as required by the nursing board rules. And more than a year has passed since she voluntarily surrendered her license. So there are no other pre-existing conditions or requirements that were imposed upon her that she hasn't completed. Ms. Shelton does bear the burden of proof in this proceeding, however, and must establish evidence sufficient to the hearing panel as to why her license should be restored. In considering that restoration, the hearing panel must evaluate the severity of the acts, the 2 separate acts which resulted in her surrenders, her conduct subsequent to her surrenders, compliance with any restoration requirements, whether she is in violation of any statute, board order, or regulation, evidence of her rehabilitation efforts, evidence of her competency, and evidence of the applicant's ability to safely practice nursing. Has she taken responsibility? Does she admit what she has done is wrong? And is she capable of performing those duties that is required of a practical nurse or a registered nurse? Those are the considerations for this panel. Thank you.
All right, thank you, counsel. At this time, I entertain a motion for the meeting to close for the board to determine whether executive session is necessary.
Can you make that motion?
It's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? I'll entertain a motion for the board to enter executive session to deliberate on license number R 649-295. Properly seconded, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. The board will now exit to executive session. We will remain in recess for, we'll try to be back by 10:30. I'll be sure to let you know. All right, thank you. We are back on the record. I will entertain a motion for the board panel to return to regular session.
I will make that motion.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The board panel is now back in regular session. I'd like to thank everyone for your patience today. Following deliberation on license number R649295NP, board panel renders the following. License reinstated with non-drug related stipulations to include a $1,000 fine, indirect supervision, 24 months probation, refresher course requirement, APRN orientation course requirement. These stipulations are to be completed within 180 days. Prescriptive authority shall remain suspended for 12 months, at which time the licensee may petition the board for reinstatement. A copy of this order will be forwarded to the licensee within 30 to 40 days. There will also be quarterly employer reports required. Are there any questions?
Mr. Chairman, is it both sets of prescriptive authority or just controlled substance?
Sorry, I did not make that clear. It's just controlled substance.
Thank you.
Yes, controlled substance. Any further questions? Hearing none, all are excused.
Thank you.
Laura? Laura, can you hear us?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Hey, Laura, it's Sandra. If you wanted to leave the meeting, you technically could, because Janie's gonna take this one, because this next one is a no-show and it's a PM.
Okay, so do you want to just let me know when I need to get back on?
This will be it for the day, ma'am.
That's it for the day?
It is.
What? Okay. All right, well, I guess I'll see y'all tomorrow.
Yeah, I think from what I understand is tomorrow will be the same thing, Laura.
Okay,
Go have fun with Lucy.
Bye,
all
Laura.
right. Bye. Y'all text if you need something.
Will do.
Okay.
Sounds really soft there today.
Provided the young lady.
Her home state. Yeah, that's what it is. Looks like we were her home state. She moved away. So we come back and answer the phone before you can go anywhere else. That is.
All right, thank you. The next matter before the board panel regarding license number P 335231. Do we have any preliminary matters on this one, council?
Yes, my name is David Minton. I'm with a Special Assistant Attorney General with the Mississippi Attorney General's Office. I'm standing in as representation for the board. I'd like to call, we have a preliminary matter regarding service process on this matter, and I'd like to call Mr. Floyd Wiley to testify to the.
You solemnly swear that the testimony you're going to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Wiley. If you would, for the record, just state your name and position.
My name is Floyd Wiley, and I am the bailiff.
And how long have you been in that position with the nursing board?
I say 10 years, approximately 10 years.
Mr. Wiley, are you familiar with all the procedures and processes for noticing a licensee for a disciplinary hearing?
Yes, sir.
And could you just briefly kind of give us just an overview of those processes?
As far as the process, we make sure that the individual is here, the person isn't here. We make sure that we try to make sure that they aren't here in the building or outside on the premises. And we go from there.
I'm going to hand you, in front of you, you got some paperwork that you previously reviewed. Could you just briefly identify those for the record?
Yes, here Exhibit B5 is the notice of today's hearing for Tracy Hubert.
Yeah, and what address? Well, before we go into what's in there, are these business records of the nursing board that are regularly kept in the normal course of business of the nursing board?
Yes, these documents are documents that do belong here at the board. And I would like to add, as far as the process, to make sure that Tracy Herbert wasn't here or isn't here. I went to the front of the building, called her name 5 times with no response. I went to the back of the building, called her name 5 times with no response. I checked the visitor sign-in log. She has not signed in. I checked the respondent sign-in sheet. She has not signed in. And I also checked the computer monitor to make sure that she wasn't a participant on the Zoom, so she was not.
Okay. Now, as to these documents, as you just testified, these are business records of the nursing board. They, what is the purpose of these documents?
Okay, so as far as D5 here is the notice of the hearing for today's hearing for Tracy Herbert, and it gives the specific date and time that the participant or the licensee is supposed to be here.
And what address does that document indicate?
On this particular item here, B5, it is addressed to Tracy Hubert at 3050 Lux Connection Northeast Salem, Oregon.
Where does that address come from? To the best of your knowledge.
This address comes from our data bank system, ThoughtSpan, here at the board.
So that address is what is on record with the nursing.
Exactly, yes, sir.
And what date was the hearing noticed on in that first document?
In this first document, the notice tells her to be here on October the 6th, 2021 at 8:30 a.m.
All right. And to the best of your knowledge, did a hearing proceed on that date against Ms. Hubert?
No, it did not.
Was there a second attempt to serve Ms. Hubert by certified mail to your knowledge?
Yes, sir, it was.
And you're holding another document that is previously marked as Exhibit B5A. If you just describe what that document provides for to the board.
Okay, it is another notice of a hearing for Tracy Hubert addressed to 7510 Youngblood Road in Olive Branch, Mississippi.
And what date does that notice of the hearing indicate?
On this one, it is today's date, February the 9th, 2022 at 8:30 a.m.
And to the best of your knowledge, how did the nursing board receive that address?
From my understanding, it is an address that Ms. Hubert provided to the board.
Okay, thank you very much. And as you previously testified, just to clarify that you have sought out Ms. Hubert in the building today or on the premises,
Yes, I am.
and she is not here?
That is correct.
Based upon your review of these business records, was Ms. Hubert, has there been any indication that Ms. Hubert received the second notice of hearing for today's date?
Yes, sir.
And what information do you have pertaining to that?
It is a USPS tracking document which states that the item was delivered to Ms. Hubert on December the 13th, 2021 in Olive Branch, Mississippi.
Mr. Hearing Officer, at this time, we would ask that what is previously marked as Exhibit B5 and B5A be entered into evidence. And they will also be part of the cumulative record as well.
Very made.
And I'll include these. Your Honor, at this time, we would request that based upon Mr. Wiley's testimony and this documentation, that it be held that Ms. Hubert was properly served in accordance to 30 Mississippi Administrative Code Part 2825, Rule .16, and that she is not present and has waived any rights to be present by her absence.
All right, thank you, counsel. Anything further?
That'll be all. Other than we would ask that the remainder of the state's exhibits be introduced, previously marked as Exhibits B1, including the previously referenced exhibits through B13. Yes, sir. B13, B1 through B13. The exhibit introduced into evidence.
You already made it, counsel.
That concludes our preliminary matters, and at this time, the state would rest on the pleadings.
Thank you, counsel. At this time, we're entertaining a motion for the board panel to enter closed session to determine whether executive session is required on this matter.
I'll make that motion.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, that motion carries. Motion for the board panel to enter executive session on the license number P335231. Properly seconded. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. That motion carries. The board panel will now exit to executive session for deliberation on this matter. We shall return shortly.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. We are back on record. We'll entertain a motion for the board panel to return to regular session.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The board panel is now back in regular session. Following deliberation on license number P335231, the board panel renders the following. The license is revoked. Do you have any other matters to come before the board panel today?
No, sir.
Hearing none, we stand adjourned until tomorrow.
You do too.
All right, y'all ready to go eat? It smells good.
Yeah.